Today's show is brought to you by homebrewsupply.com. Right now, for the month of July, get refurbished ball lock heads for cheap, 20% off premium Becker faucets, and free shipping on orders of $100 or more when you use the promo code JULY. Go to homebrewsupply.com right now and let us help make your next brew day better.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hey there, and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I'm joined by the Director of Operations at homebrewsupply.com, Mr. Ladik Joe Ermis. Joe, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, doing well. How's it going?
It's good to see you. It feels like it's been so long. I've been up there. It's almost like Black Friday in July, how much I've been up there. We had meetings. I feel like we've just been in meetings all days for a lot of time, and it was enjoyable. But man, like yesterday, I think it was like a 6-hour meeting.
Yeah, pretty much all day. We were kind of in and out of that meeting.
Yeah. Todd's a talker. But it's that time of year, planning out stuff for the companies, getting prepared for the really busy time coming up. Because right now,
we've got a lot going on. Yeah,
there's so much going on right now. Traditionally, is slow in the industry in regards to people don't brew as much. Just a generalization, but there's statistics to support it. I won't, like Bart from the Brewers Association. His statistics are depressing, and they're more about retail and commercial operations. But there is numbers to support. Like a lot of people don't homebrew in the summer. They have gas systems, maybe they're not electric, they're not inside, temperature controlled. And I know down here, we've had decent weather lately, but it's been triple digits, flirting with triple digits. That's not fun.
Right. No, it's not. It's rough to brew when it's that hot out, and it's even harder to kind of cool your wort down after the boil when the temperature of the water coming out of the faucet, is 80 or 90 degrees. So yeah, it can be a little rough during the summer. We've actually, surprisingly, we've had a decent, it is traditionally slower this time of the year for sales and everything, but we've been doing pretty well. So yeah, it's good to see.
Oh yeah, I was going to say I have actually been surprised with how many recipes specifically are going out. I'm like, man, who are all these people brewing? I don't want to brew right now. I have a beach trip coming up, and I was originally going to take some of that Kolsch out of the keg. I was like, I don't want to do a growler because really, you can give me your opinion. In my opinion, if I don't drink that growler in 2 days,
or less, yeah. Right, I usually, if I get one filled, I'll try and drink it that night, or the next day at the very latest. So.
Exactly, and right. in 64 ounces, I was just like, that's we're going to the beach for 6 days. The growler would at best be for the first couple days, and then I'm out of beer anyway, or not even taking multiple growlers. It doesn't hold pressure. It doesn't magically.
Right. Well, they do. There is one on the market that you can hook up a CO2 tank too, but they're expensive.
Right.
They're nice, but again, they're expensive. And either taking a keg or just buying some cans and bottles. A lot of times that's just easier. Throw them in an ice chest, throw some bag of ice in there, and you can haul it out to the beach or wherever.
Yeah, I totally should have clarified. I'm cheap, and my growlers don't pressurize. So I would just have the tubing off of my Becker V2G faucet and dispense it, and then close it up, and then have to drink it within the first day or two.
Which is most common. Yeah,
totally.
There are some there's some fancy growlers, but it's just I don't even know how practical that would be, honestly, to haul down to the beach.
And so what I did was I just bought my favorite commercial Kolsch, which is Fru, Fruh. or Alaskan. I like Alaskan, but my local liquor store didn't have any because I also like Alaskan's Amber, which is an alt type of amber.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
But I got the local one from Fredericksburg, Altstadts. I bought some of their alt.
Nice.
So my wife's having this big family reunion type thing, and I figure I know one of the cousins is bringing a bunch of beer, and it'll be a good mix between all the beer we bring. And I'm predictable. So I haven't, if I just drink my alt and my Kolsch every night, I'll probably be a happy guy.
Yeah, I was going to say during the day, the Kolsch will be great. And then kind of during the evenings, the alt, that'll be perfect.
Oh, because I have cigars too. Oh, I planned this out. I'm going to be social with her family, probably. I mean, we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
See how lubricated up you get from that Kolsch and alt.
No kidding. Yeah, maybe they'll like me more. I don't know. I do well. They need to be intoxicated to like me. That's my best demographic. And old women, but I don't have to rehash that. Speaking of alt, though, I do have a bone to pick with the absent Todd Burns. He's here back in my area, working on the rental property, I think, again.
Yeah.
And James, I didn't have him set up his equipment yet. So thank you, first off, for coming on the show on short notice. But James and Todd, I don't know if you remember, yesterday they got a special package delivery to Keg Connection / CM Becker, or I guess it's technically to CM Becker.
From CM Becker International.
From CMB Schonkenlagen. And it was a delicious surprise. I don't know how much I can or can't divulge, but all I'll say is they're not sharing. Go on James's Instagram page and look at what he's flaunting. And James, you're flaunting that you didn't share. And then Todd was like, I'm not opening this. What were they anyways? A liter? 2 liter? What was the...
I don't know.
It's like a 2-gallon
mini kegs. Yeah, like a gallon and a half or 2 gallon.
At most 2 gallon. And he was like, I don't want to open it because then I have to drink it. And I was like, we could go through a lot of that tonight, man. To Schlussel. Have you had Schlussel ever?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Schlussel's legit.
Sure.
And he, no, I'm not opening it. So I'm not getting any is the gist of it.
Yeah, I don't think I will be either. I looked in the fridge. I only ate about half my lunch today and put the rest in the fridge. And I saw Todd's box in there that had a sticky note on it. Todd's beer ! See,
these jerks. I've literally had listeners there's been beer that has appeared in my office somehow magically. And
you're happy to share.
And it's addressed to me usually. And even some of them are like, oh, Josh would try this. And I share with y'all. I'm benevolent.
That's right.
That's the way we do things.
That's how it should work.
Not these old men. These old men, and they're yelling at clouds and keeping all the beer.
I could certainly understand if they were shipped 1 keg, but I think we shot 4 of them arrived or something. Yeah, like good lord,
4 of them. Let's say each one was. Let's give the benefit of the doubt, because I think Todd said that they added to 5 gallons, but I think his conversion's wrong. Let's say they're 4 gallons. I'm not saying I want a whole gallon to myself, but come on.
Yeah. I'd like to try it. Yeah.
I'd like to try it. No. They're like Smeagol. My precious. If you can't tell, that rubbed me the wrong way. And I get to Todd's house last night at the barn. No beer on draft. Nothing. He drank all the alt. Well, actually, I drank the last of his alt, so that's fine. That last time I came up, he didn't tell me he was all out his ESB, all out of his Kolsch, all out of his winter warmer, and then even all out, he dumped the sweet alt, which was fine because it was terrible. It was a porter. It wasn't, but he was out of everything. He might have dumped the winter warmer, to be fair. He didn't tell me if he dumped it or not. It was getting kind of old.
I don't know, because it was getting old, but not. It's one that ages well. If you remember when we had that brew day, we tried some, and it's coming along nicely. So he may have just finished that. It had been there a while, so it had to be getting low.
The good thing is, because you were there with me last night, we drank some good bottled and canned beers that I may not have cracked open. We reopened. Our buddy Jeff had sent a bunch from his neck of the woods, and this one, Ohio, and or not Ohio, pardon me, Iowa, and Pseudo Sue. What was the name? Toppling Giant?
Goliath.
Toppling Goliath. Are they? They're out of Ohio, right?
I think so.
Ohio. Gosh, I'm stupid. Iowa.
I know the brewery well enough to not know where they're at. I mean, I see their label art and their can art and stuff, but I don't even exactly know where they're at. But Iowa, good enough guess for me.
I'm doing a Twitch search to try to act like I know. Yes, Iowa. Of course, we knew they were from Iowa. Yeah, because Jeff, that's where he lives. And then I forget the name of the brewery. Maybe Single Speed, the ones who did that Hellas, the Gable one named after the grappler.
Right.
I'm trying to think of I didn't catalog them all. Someone pointed that out. I posted the first. I started with Four Squared, which is Fireman's Ford, but dry hopped. From Real Ale out here in Blanco. Wonderful beer. And I've took a photo of that, put it on the Instagram story, and then I didn't do any more. And someone messaged me this morning saying, normally on these drinking nights, you catalog like all the beer. Did you drop your phone or did you get plastered on Fireman's Ford?
Well, you had it playing music the whole night. Remember?
That's why. That's what I said. I was like, oh yeah, Todd's new system had Bluetooth, and it doesn't reach to where I could also use my phone. So I just had to leave it inside. I felt so naked not using my phone and ignoring y'all all night. It was weird. But we did have a good time. Speaking of that brew day, I do want to bring that up. We had a chance to do hands-on brewing with the brand new foundry from Anvil. Yep. There's plenty of videos online doing an overview. We'll have our own overview coming out this weekend. And then our brew day video followed by we will publish that fairly quickly after the overview video. But we had a good time. We'll do a quick little recap of it. I think in that realm, it is definitely an attention getter for me. The pump was nice. Mm-hmm. You know, Anvil is a sister company, subsidiary. What's the correct term for? They're underneath Blickman.
Right. They're definitely a part of this, owned by the same people as Blickman. I don't know exactly how. It's just a rebranding for a different line of products, I assume, is kind of why they went that way. But everything we've tested out from Anvil or anything we've heard from customer feedback has always been pretty positive with their products. So definitely nice to be able to actually test out that system. And we ran into a few hiccups, but that kind of comes with the territory of brewing a batch on a system you've never brewed on,
or brew days in general.
yes, exactly. Very good point. But overall, it went smoothly enough. We got the beer done, we got it fermenting, and we used a Imperial's seasonal yeast at the time is Kviking, and it we ferment where it's in Todd's container out there, so it's fermenting at like between 80 and 90 degrees, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it turns out. I think we're gonna dry hop it this coming Monday after the weekend. He'll be back in town, so throw some dry hops in there and get it ready for kegging.
Did you get a chance when you were up yesterday? Because the brew day was Friday, so a week ago.
Right.
The weekend happened. Did you go look at it in his container? I haven't.
I was supposed to do that last night. I didn't actually end up making it in there. It was already kind of dark by the time we got done eating dinner and stuff. But he said that it really went to town the first couple days, and that's kind of how Imperial works. It is extremely aggressive yeast for most of the for the most part.
Yep.
So that's kind of what he was saying is it went to town those first 2 or 3 days, and then kind of trickled down to being probably about wrapped up at this point. So again, we're just going to kind of let some of that stuff clean up and finish up and then settle out and then go ahead and dry hop it. We're using an ounce of Galaxy and an ounce of Calypso, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So should be good.
It's going to be a real interesting beer. We obviously this has no real bearing on the end result, but that bit we took out after the final after the gravity reading going into fermentation, it was tasty, man. It's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
Big time. Yeah, I'm excited to see. I've never brewed that recipe before. It's kind of like a oatmeal pale ale / New England pale ale. So it's fairly light alcohol. It's like 5%. But it used a bunch of oat malt and a bunch of flaked oats to kind of help boost the body and try and prevent it from tasting or seeming too thin with the amount of hops that we're using. Again, we didn't really use much for bittering. I think we put in like a half ounce of Columbus at 45 minutes of the boil. So, and then everything else came with like the last 5 and Flame Out and Whirlpool and that kind of thing. So, I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about you, like my whole shtick, which is it's just a lifestyle. I'm very predictable. You could probably guess what I'm going to brew if I made the recipe myself or picked the recipe myself. I don't believe we've ever brewed with you the same thing twice.
Right. Yeah.
And like, we're like, oh, we're going to do a film day. Brew, make whatever recipe you want. You can make it very straightforward and easy if you want. And you're like, I'm going to make something I've never done before, and I have no idea how it's going to turn out. Like, I love it because like
it always turns out good.
It always turns out good though. That's the thing. Like I love, like I said, I don't know what. I think in video game world, and maybe I'm jinxing you now. They say that about like BioWare. They say, "Oh, the BioWare magic," and you know, I'm now going to bore people, but there was some hiccups with their recent releases. But like, yeah, the Joe Ermis magic. It just always works out. But it really was tasty. Like I have not had a bad beer from you. That Mosaic Pils, it was one of these recipes you just made up and ended up being phenomenally received by attendees. I don't know how it's selling. I don't know how it's pushed on there, but I know.
Yeah, I wish there was a way for customers to try a little taste of it before they buy a recipe, you know, because it's hard to know if it's something you're going to really like by just the description, especially if you haven't been brewing for very long and you don't know how some of those ingredients play together. So yeah, it is kind of a, you know, even if we had like a scratch and sniff function on the website, something to give people an idea of what they're getting into.
I like that. We will do. That's the next frontier for homebrew marketing.
Right.
I know all the competitors are listening. You better not implement that, Northern. And then one last thing before we get into today's questions, because I did have people bring it up with me. I apologize. So Stefan from CMB Schottenlagen was in town. We had him. We had a blast. We hung out with him. We did a brew day with him. We did not do a podcast with Stefan. We didn't have time. We were swamped. He was him. I was complaining about our meetings today. Or yesterday, I don't believe he, James, or Todd, and then every now and then myself ever came out of that office. Yeah. They were meeting the whole time with various conference calls, and then themselves, and then another conference call, and then I sat in there for whatever reason for a little bit, and then conference call. I did not have time to say, Stefan, we're doing a podcast right now.
Yeah, and set aside 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just wasn't time. I remember walking in there a couple times and being like, okay, they're swamped. I'm just going to go ahead and send an email.
Exactly. I'll address it later. So I do apologize because I have this bad habit of being like, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. And I'm putting all my eggs in this basket and prematurely announcing it to everybody, all of our listeners, all 10 of them are going to know my plans. And then when it doesn't happen, I have egg on my face and I have to come humbly begging for forgiveness. So Stefan did offer, he's such a gentleman, to do it remotely, but
nice.
But it's just not the same, Stefan.
Yeah, it's not. And I should mention, he doesn't, we kind of showed him a general walkthrough of a brew day. I guess he hasn't brewed very much or ever really.
Yeah.
But he will be receiving that anvil, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to hook him up with that so he's able to brew some 5-gallon batches in Germany.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Todd, when he drinks, becomes benevolent himself. And not to everybody, but to Stefan. And so he was like, oh, why don't we just send this to you? And but Stefan was like, yes, that's a great idea. And he wants to brew. He wants to get his friends into brewing. I think he wants to start the German division of Homebrew Supply. I don't remember all the details. I heard something like he's going to open a warehouse. We're going to move there. I don't know. I don't remember all the details. But Stefan, we will probably have a show with him in the future. But also, too, I say that very half-heartedly only because he basically runs that company. He's got a gazillion employees, but he's like Todd. His hand's always in everything, and when he gets really busy, he gets really focused. And so if Todd can't make time for this show, I don't know if Stefan is. But just planting that seed, we're going to try to get Stefan on. Moving on, this is a Q&A show. I did have to beg for someone to come on to do this with me because I could not answer the questions by myself. So getting into question number 1, who came from AJ, using the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. AJ wrote, my question is in regards to stuck fermentation. You may have gone over this in a previous episode, but to be honest, I haven't gone back through the archived episodes. Please don't, AJ. Like episodes 1 through 35 or 40, just act like they didn't happen. I've almost deleted them from the web. I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. I've purchased a kit from Homebrew Supply, and the pack came with White Labs yeast. I've never tried their yeast before, so I was excited to try it now. But 36 hours in, nothing was happening with the beer. Temperature is where it's supposed to be. I tried giving the carboy a shake to get things going. I repitched a new yeast, and nothing is working. Am I pitching or do I need to waste this 5-gallon batch, or is there anything I can do to save it? Any tricks of the trade would be appreciated. Here's my favorite part. He did a Huds and Kisses, friend of the podcast, AJ. That's my favorite part. He knew how to get me to read this out on the show and get his gift card. There's a lot of factors that could contribute to stuck fermentation, right?
Sure.
Go ahead and go over like an overview of maybe the most common reasons and then like what we can do to resolve that.
Yeah. So the first thing I usually recommend to people is to, I inquire if they did an original gravity reading, and then go ahead and have them take another reading while it's in the fermenter. Sometimes you can have fermentation occurring with it being hard to really notice, or there's not a ton of bubbles coming up. And it's especially true with lagers. I don't know the exact kit you ordered or which yeast you're using, but lagers can be deceptively actually fermenting, and it doesn't appear to be, but it can even happen with ale, especially if you're in like a bucket. Sometimes the lids don't have the most 100% seal, so your CO2 may be escaping from there. So my first general rule of thumb is to go ahead and get a gravity reading, see where you're at. If you're at the starting gravity still, then yes, you've already done kind of the next step is to usually pitch another packet of yeast. Sometimes even if the yeast is in date, you can have some either sluggish or non-viable yeast that just isn't doing the job. So pitching another pack will a lot of times help that. You can raise the temperature, even if you're in the range that the yeast recommends. If you raise it a few degrees, that may kind of kick it off. Another thing that most people do know, but a lot of people maybe not be aware, is how crucial it is to aerate your beer or your wort before you pitch that yeast. It's the only time you really want to actually introduce oxygen. So if you don't have like O2 bottle and like a carb stone, you can certainly shake the carboy for, a few minutes before you pitch your yeast, and that'll help introduce some oxygen. Yeast needs oxygen to get going and to perform. Other than that, man, there's other things you can possibly try, but those are kind of the go-to elements of kind of trying to figure out either what happened, what went wrong, what you can do, obviously, again, to get it going. If you're, and it doesn't necessarily, I don't know if you have necessarily a stuck fermentation or just you haven't had any fermentation. There's a little bit of a difference there. So if you end up with a higher efficiency than you originally calculated, sometimes you'll end up at 1067 and you calculated your yeast cell quantity for a 1060. Your efficiency was higher than expected. Sometimes you may not reach that final gravity that you wanted. At that point, you can pitch some more yeast, something like that. You can even turn to like bugs and either like a combination of lactobacillus and Brettanomyces to kind of help really finish out. It may introduce some flavors that you don't want. Again, a lot of people enjoy some of those tart farmhouse flavors. So that's another possibility you can consider.
And you'd probably save the beer, right?
That's the ultimate thing. I never want to tell people it's like it's ruined, you're going to have to restart. It's usually never the case. I mean, you can usually get it kicked off. So, during these summer months and when it's so hot out, shipping liquid yeast is a little bit of a risk. We do usually recommend to have some dry yeast, like a pack of Safel 05 or 04, something fairly neutral that you can use on a variety of beers. If you do have some issue with your liquid yeast, or just you have an issue like you're having with the stuck fermentation, and you have an extra pack of dry yeast in the freezer, and trying to get it going. So it's really, I can't figure out what would have caused that for you, AJ. But if you want, I don't know if you've reached out via email. I'm not recalling an email from you, but if you haven't, definitely shoot us an email and reach out, and we can definitely try and get to the bottom of what's going on.
Right, like learning which strain of White Labs it was, what he repitched. Because that's weird to me. Because remember, you were the one who helped me, I believe. Where the suggestion ended up being put some dry yeast in, and my dad and I did that, and it kicked off 18 hours, not quite 18 hours, like 12 hours later. Right. I'm making up a number, but it was far enough to where I'd already left my pop's house, but soon enough to where
he called you and said, "Oh, it's going now."
Yeah, it was like, "Oh, okay." Whew, because we thought, what could we have done wrong? And I remember, like, you and James both asking about the process of getting the oxygen in that beer, like, because James was like, you can when you're letting it transfer, you don't need a tube on that barb off your kettle to the bottom of your. No, let it go into that bucket, or we use a Genesis fermenter, but like just let it splash. Todd, on the brew day video we did with him and James on that cooler brew, they just leave it wide open in that bucket, sloshing it around. They pitching the yeast during that point, sloshing it around. I think they know, but new brewers, which is a good chunk of our audience, it's easy to conflate or be confused about oxygen. Like, wait, oxygen bad. No, wait, at this part, oxygen good.
Well, that's a great point, because especially if you're new to brewing, you learn the craft by any time you put oxygen in your beer, it's a bad thing. Oxygen is the devil of beer, or the worst enemy of beer. That's and that's why I mentioned that is the only time in the whole process you do want to actually introduce oxygen.
So our buddy Owen from Imperial may not like the answer to this question, but I have to ask it. Would a starter have future-proofed this non-existent or potentially stuck fermentation from happening?
Sure, that's a really great question. The real advantage to a starter is it's going to double or possibly even triple the amount of yeast that you're going to put in there. But one of the other really nice things about making a starter a day or two before your brew is you'll have an idea how viable that yeast is. If you have no activity in your starter, then you're going to either have to get more yeast or figure something else out. So it works on a couple fronts. It ensures you're going to most likely have enough, the correct amount of cells. If you're using one pack, especially for a higher gravity beer, you can make a 1,500 to 2,000 liter starter and kind of double or triple, sometimes, like I said, triple your count. And then again, it's going to really help you know and just kind of lock in, take a little weight off your shoulders, knowing that yeast is active, it's going. And then the third thing starters really help with is the lag between pitching your yeast and it to actually begin fermenting. It's going to go into that beer or that wort ready to rock and roll. And it's going to, I've pitched starters and seen activity within a couple hours after pitching. So
that's why I asked, because I know I've never done a starter, full transparency. I've never had to, even in that stuck, or ours was, what do you call it when it doesn't happen? It's just no fermentation's going on. We just did the dry yeast. We had a pack of 05. And
just poured it right in,
and boom, it took off. Thank God. No worries. But I bring that up because there are people, like, I'm fortunate that worst case scenario, if I had to, I could drive 15 minutes from where my parents live, go to SoCo, wonderful local homebrew supply shop in Austin, Texas, and get more yeast on the fly and not lose a whole lot of time. There's a good chunk of people who don't have a local homebrew supply shop, and that's why they order from online at homebrewsupply.com, and they don't have the luxury of making last-minute changes to where maybe it would be advisable to either overbuy or I'm going into a weird, maybe off-topic gray zone, but like, not saying every time just be cynical and I better buy an extra pack just in case. But if you live like in rural wherever, maybe making starters should be part of your brew day process to, again, protect yourself, because nothing's worse than telling a person like AJ to throw away the wort that you have in this carboy.
Spend all day making.
You spent a whole day making this. You've got it. It probably still smells great. You did your, you pitch it.
And if it's not fermenting at all, that it's not infected, so it's still good, clean wort. You just need to get some yeast in there that's going to actually work. It's really hard for me, and I don't know if it was an all grain or an extract batch that he made. With extract, it's like you're basically dumping in those sugars, so there's almost no chance for it to be, not have enough sugar for it to ferment. With all grain, it's a little bit different because you're converting the starches in the grains to sugars yourself, so efficiency plays into a factor there, and you may not have the amount of sugars that the recipe was calculated to provide you. But in general, if you just have no activity at all, usually the best solution is to either try and re-aerate and pitch, raise the temperature a bit to see if that kicks it off. The other point that we should make is it is crucial, obviously, to get your wort chilled below temperature for the yeast to not actually just die when you pitch it. So hopefully you had it, below at least 80 before you pitch the initial yeast. That obviously that's going to make a big difference. But you've already said on your question that you did pitch a second pack, so it's highly unlikely that it was still over 90 or whatever when you pitched that second pack. I honestly couldn't tell you exactly what went wrong, but again, if you want to reach out, support@homebrewsupply.com, we can get some more details from you and try and kind of get to the bottom of it,
and maybe do a follow-up.
Yeah.
And all right, so AJ, thank you for submitting your question. Moving on, we have one more question also about yeast. Came from Tyler using the submission form as well at homebrewhappyhour.com. Tyler wrote in, I've recently started washing and reusing yeast to save costs. I can't talk today. I'm on tongue-tied. I normally leave beer in the starter for the duration and want to know if dry hopping will ruin the yeast or change anything. I'm brewing pale ales that are dry hopped with a few ounces, but also New England IPAs. Thank you for your show. I've learned tons from you guys and look forward to the entertainment. I've never saved yeast. I've never washed it. I don't or rinse it either way. Never reuse it. James is really big on that kick. I know I included this question and I've never asked you. Have you ever done the process of saving your yeast?
Sure. Oh yeah. I used to do it quite often because it obviously it is a money saver. But it can also work similar to a starter. A lot of people will, if they're about to rack their beer into secondary or into a keg, they will go ahead and brew a batch that day, rack into the keg or secondary, and then boom, pitch that batch, the batch they just brewed right on top of that yeast bed that was left over from the original one. And that's similar to how breweries do it. So that's certainly a way to, as long as you're doing either a similar recipe or a recipe that uses a similar style of yeast, then you shouldn't have any issues there. Another really good way is to actually harvest that yeast, wash it. You put it in the fridge in like a sanitized mason jar, and you let the good stuff kind of settle to the bottom. You'll see like a yellowish beige creaminess on the bottom, and then you'll usually see a layer of sediment, which is like a darker gray. And then you'll have, a little bit of wort on that to kind of keep it going in there. And then you'll kind of scrape some of that gray off, let it resettle, and you can kind of continue that process. And that would be the general basis of washing your yeast. When you do dry hop on your yeast, hops do a number of things. So they're naturally, the resins and stuff are naturally a preservative. So it does, the resins in hops do prevent or they do kind of, they slow at least the reproduction of yeast. So that is one thing to consider. You also, or most likely, get some off flavors just from hop material being mixed in with the yeast. So in my personal experience, I usually try and put my beer into a secondary. If I'm planning on reusing that yeast, put it into a secondary, dry hop in the secondary, then take care of your yeast. That should be fine with any of the pails and stuff you do like that. With the New England styles, it's a little more complicated because you're starting to put in dry hops day 3 a lot of times of fermentation, where you're not going to be ready to secondary
harvest that. Yeah,
right. So it's going to be rough. I have read that you can wash out some hop debris from yeast. I just don't know how effective it is, so I don't feel comfortable saying that you shouldn't have any issue with that.
Right.
But it's something to definitely, browse some forums to see how other people have had experiences with washing yeast that has dry hops mixed in with it. And you probably will find
seems like a lot of work in my opinion, not just the saving the yeast. I mean, like for a New England style, because like you said, you're day 3 into fermentation, you're adding hops. And then, like you said,
another 3 days in, you're adding more.
Right.
So,
and all that is affecting your yeast.
And, to an extent, it's all going to settle down to the bottom.
That's what I mean. Totally.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's and you don't want to bring it with you to the yeast you're trying to harvest.
Right.
I wouldn't think, unless you're brewing the exact same. No, because then it's still going to affect it. Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. You have to rinse all that out, right? I mean,
if you're gonna try and harvest the yeast that you've dry hopped, you're gonna have to try and wash it. It's not gonna be just a direct pitch without some kind of difference, I would assume. One thing I guess you could try and consider doing is using like a straining bag for your hops to try and prevent as much of that debris to get settled in with your yeast, and that may help some, but I mean, that's a really good question on New England's, because I would love to know how these breweries do it, because there's no way that they can pitch fresh yeast every batch. They just won't make any money that way. They have to stretch their yeast out 7, 8, sometimes 10 generations to really make that yeast stretch out. And
who's a local one that we can have on the show? And
Pine House.
So let's do that. I'll reach out to Pine House, which I forgot to tell you. This is totally off topic, but I'll say it on air so I remember. The Spite Seltzer Company out of Austin is going to be on the show in the future.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
They
got back to you.
They got back to me. Learn all. I'm going to reach out to Pine House. That's beautiful. I wish we still. Our buddy from EJ Beverage, or formerly from EJ Beverage, Greg Kinney, was real tight with them. I should name drop him and ask Pine House, like, hey, we want to ask a question, and they don't have to give us the trade secrets, but I'm interested too, because like you said, they are not pitching generation 1 fresh yeast every batch,
right?
Or they're filthy rich. There's no.
Well, I mean, they charge enough for their beers. It's not like they overcharge by any means, but when you use so many dry hops, lupulin powder, and all those expensive hops are not cheap. That they justify the cost of their pints, but. Yeah, I can't imagine they're pitching fresh yeast each batch. It doesn't seem like it would.
They're slinging a lot of pizza, man.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely true.
That would be great to ask them, and also because their styles are some of my favorite in that realm. Them, like that treehouse you gave me too, reminded me like, oh, I don't hate everything in this style. Like, right. Like with just the people who do it right, do it really right. And Pine House is up there. What was that one? Didn't you bring a Pine House to Todd's a long time ago? Was it? No, we did a question on electric jellyfish.
Yeah.
We didn't have any yet. Then we didn't have any then.
Right.
You've had plenty. That would be great though, because the new.
And I think they're fairly open with a lot of their practices too. So I don't think we, offend them or step on any toes by, asking them some of those harvesting questions on how they make their yeast stretch.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say, hey, can I bring a camera into production and film it? But I am interested in talking to a brewer about the intricacies of doing that, especially at that batch level. Because again, I'm a man of efficiency, which is code word for lazy. Saving yeast and washing it just doesn't interest me anyway, because I haven't had to do it. And I haven't had to push pennies because of what I do for a living. I'm fortunate enough to get it for more affordable pricing and blah, blah. Or I'm just schmooze and sweet talk Owen. And sometimes he's just really nice to me. But I can't, I'm just interested now in the concept of it for a New England style, because that does seem super tedious and curious, because I don't see how you do it. It doesn't make sense in my head. To be fair, a lot of things don't make sense in my head. I'm not the end all be all for logic and such. But Tyler, that's a great question on washing and reusing yeast. Like you said, like Joe had mentioned, it's the part where he asked if it would ruin or change. I think we can agree, ruin, probably not the right word. Change, almost definitely.
Yeah, that's good. That's well put. I don't honestly know how many or how much of an impact those off flavors may come with that, or may even, you may not even notice, but it's something that I haven't done a lot myself as far as any yeast that I've harvested. From my experience, I've had a fairly clean yeast without previous to dry hopping. So I wish I did have a little bit more personal experience, but maybe we'll do some testing here and we can maybe get back to you and get a follow-up to that.
Perfect. Joe, that's the last question of the show, man. I really appreciate your time doing this last minute again.
Yeah, for sure.
Day of publication. I love these pressure shows. I love it. But thank you, my friend, and I'll see you at you very soon.
Yes, sir. We'll see you soon, man.
All right.
Take care.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now, a reminder, you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, homebrewsupply.com, for supporting our podcast and the home brewing community. Go to homebrewsupply.com, use our promo code HHH, and you'll get 5% off your order. On behalf of Ladik Joe Ermis, the absent Todd Burns, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.